MEC in absentia. I know we are not in apologies, but I would know that he has already sent an apology, which we will deal with it under apologies, but he had spoken to me. And the HOD who heads this team, and your officials HOD, you're all welcome. I know that we're supposed to have the AG as a stakeholder to be part of the committee, but they indicated some difficulties of not coming, and then we will deal with it under apologies. And above all, we also welcome the people of Gauteng to this particular gathering. I was earlier saying that one of the things that the legislature is good in is the screens. When you come in, you see the screens in front of you. But as to where the information is going, ultimately, I'm not sure. Whether they share it with, what is that, YouTube? Or all of those? You do that? Yeah, YouTube and Facebook. Yeah. And I see the department people are taking care of all of us today. But when you go to their Facebook, you'll only see them. You won't see the committee, HOD. I don't know whether there's a rule or what is it. They say we were in the portfolio committee meeting, but you see none of the portfolio committee members. I do go through those. Thank you very much, and the meeting has started. And now, because we are outside the legislature, we will go towards the declaration, and I'll do that quickly. I, Honorable Mzika Ifani Kumalo, Chairperson of CoGTA Portfolio Committee, hereby declare that the Kivitskron Camels Drift east of Pretoria in the city of Tshwane as the precinct of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature in terms of Rule 56, subsection 2 of the Standing Rules of Gauteng Legislature version 5, revision 2, read together with section 2.1 and section 28 of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act number 4 of 2004. For the duration of this meeting, this place will be the precinct of the Gauteng Legislature. Thus, the standing rules of the legislature will apply and govern all the engagement of the day. The precinct of the parliamentary provincial legislature are described as follows. 1, the precinct of parliament is the area, land, and every building or part of a building under parliament control, including A, the chambers in which the proceedings of the House are conducted and the galleries and lobbies of the chambers. 2, every part of the building in which the chambers are situated, and every forecourt, yard, garden, enclosure, or open space appurtenant thereto. Committee rooms and other meeting places provided are used primarily for parliament purposes, and every other building or part of the building provided or used in connection with the proceeding of parliament while in use. Can we have members confirming if they understand the content of what I've just read? Any member?
Yes, Chair, we understand.
Thank you very much, Member Musai, speaking on all of us. Thank you very much. Can we then proceed to apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, honorable members, colleagues from the department, and colleagues from GPL. We've received the following apologies. Member Msimang and Member Diacher, who are busy with the committee, the political party matters, and Member Nyati, who has prior commitment. Thank you.
Aw, mkhulu wami madoda akekho namhlanje. Ngizocall up so. So we're noting the apologies and accepting them. So Limsimbango sa draft a motion namanje. It's a simple thing that they would have requested me to do it for them. I would have finished by now. No, that's my friend. Any other apologies? No. The MEC. ministry would have called me and indicated that they are hosting an infrastructure summit by the national minister. And therefore, tomorrow he will not be, it's 2 days. Tomorrow he is expected to be in the house. I get like it's and therefore he will not be able to attend. So it would be bad because we are the hosting province, that he wouldn't be there at all. So we agreed that he would attend on the other side today. So we must please accept his apology. And AGASA indicated that they will not be able to, but we will work with them to arrange that special meeting with them so that they take us through the issues they were supposed to. Those will be apologies. Apologies accepted? Accept.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just early departure for me and Member Masoleng. We have to be at the legislature caucus of tomorrow's sitting. By 11 o'clock, we'll be leaving. And I do move for...
You're going to choose the CD that we will listen to. I hope it's the one that all of us can dance for. Yeah, Rex Rabani. Can we have anybody moving for the acceptance?
I second the move, Chair.
Apologies being accepted. There's no objection. Thank you very much. Can we move towards the confirmation of the agenda? We'll do the opening remark, and then we'll have the presentation on the second quarter. The presentation by department on second quarter. Oh, department. And then thereafter we'll have the date of the next meeting. This should be the very short meeting. Member Dileba, I decided to come to the part of your town. I hope I didn't take you further. You hear? Thank you. Anyone who move for the adoption of the agenda?
I move, Chair.
The chairperson of young people is moving for. And any seconder?
I second, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I thought it's Friday. You can't take it Thursday. Thank you very much. In terms of the opening remarks, we're meeting today to receive the Department of Cooperative Governance to 2025 to 2026 second quarter performance report to highlight moderate progress across key programs with notable strides in municipal support and governance intervention. During the second quarter of this report under the review, the Gauteng Department of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs reported mixed performance against its planned target. The department achieved approximately 65% of its quarterly performance indicators, with delays primarily attributed to procurement bottlenecks and capacity constraint at municipal level. Needless to say, HOD, that one of our analyses is that many of the vacancies that exist in municipalities, you'll find them in supply chain and infrastructure. So we're not surprised by this observation. Significant progress was also made in the implementation of district development model, where intergovernmental coordination improved in 18 priority districts, supported and enhanced by enhanced technical support and planning integration. The Municipal Infrastructure Support Agent, MISA, accelerated its deployment of engineers and planners to distressed municipalities, contributing to improved project execution and oversight. However, challenges persist in the rollout of the Municipal Support and Intervention Program, particularly in provinces experiencing prolonged service delivery failures and financial distress, or in municipalities that experience that. The department also advanced its anti-corruption and consequence management efforts with several forensic investigations concluded and referred to for action, though follow through by municipalities remain uneven. Financially, the department spent just about 50% of its allocated budget by the end of this Q2, with underspending noted in conditional grants and infrastructure support programs. The report underscores the need for strengthening monitoring systems, improved municipal compliance, and accelerated implementation of Section 139 intervention where governance collapse is evident. Overall, while strategic intent remain aligned with annual performance plan, operational execution requires intensified oversight and intergovernmental collaboration to meet year-end target. In conclusion, the committee said I should tell you this, HOD, that sometimes we struggle to juxtapose what you are telling us here and the reality on the ground. Because if you look at the reality on the ground, the municipality seems not to be what you are telling us here. We've got to find a scientific mechanism that would close that gap and make us really to be happy and say all these good things that you're telling us here are not just words, but reality on the ground. Thank you very much. Let us then move to the next item, which is the presentation by the department on the second quarterly performance report. Thank you very much, HOD, in the manner you want to do it.
Honorable Chair, good morning to yourself, and good morning to all the honorable members in the House, and thank you for the opportunity. Chair, indeed, the assessment by the committee is correct. I think as CoGTA, whilst we don't want to overemphasize the work that we are doing, we know that in the end, it can only be attributed to improved service delivery on the ground. And Chair, by the time we have done our work as CoGTA in municipalities, we expect municipalities to take it a bit further, improve service delivery, but also improve their responsiveness towards service delivery in communities. But it often, looking at the service delivery systems that we have in municipalities, it's often a challenge. And that is where the breakdowns in service delivery comes from. And that is, of course, where the increased number of protests come from. Chair, I will also say that it's an area that we are working closely with. Firstly, the Office of the Premier, and then secondly with the Department of E-Government, because we need to improve the manner in which we get communities to respond and also table some of the queries and how as CoGTA we channel that through to the communities. And we often rely heavily on the Office of the Premier to ensure that the service delivery hotline, they do engage with communities, they do report to them when a matter is resolved to test the level of satisfaction. But that, Chair, is an area that requires much more improvement, because whilst you're doing the administrative part, you will only feel the presence once the work on the ground has been fully executed. Chair, the performance report of the department will take into consideration both financial and non-financial performance. For the first time, Chair, we're going to report on the transformational issues, and we're also going to report for the first time on, whilst we talk about governance issues, we do not often talk a lot about some of the AG queries. As a department, whilst we can celebrate the clean audit outcome, we do not want to become complacent, but we want to be responsive to the needs of the AG. Chair, I would want us to move straight away to slide 4. And slide 4 gives you a high level of the overall performance of the department. The department comprises of 4 programs, and program 1 with the program that is primarily internally focused have achieved 71% of the targets. The local governance program, which is the biggest, have achieved 94% of the targets. Development planning, 75%. And your traditional institutional management, they have achieved 100%. That is the smallest program in the department, and they have achieved. Chair, there is a few areas that we need to report on that we feel as a department we should focus on. Chair, on the organizational structure and the building capacity in the department, I'm going to, in the next few slides, elaborate a little bit more on those. There were quite a few questions on the capacity when we tabled the annual report, and we just wanted to put more context to that, to the portfolio committee, so that we could see where we're coming from and why we are managing it like that. Chair, under Program 2, our project relating to the asset-based community development model, Chair, I have given the unit strict instructions that we shouldn't book outside venues because we are having fiscal constraints. None of those initiatives has taken place due to some challenges in municipalities. But Chair, the fact that we have not achieved that target in Q2 does not mean we're not going to achieve it by the end of the financial year. That target must be achieved. This work that we are doing, particularly in our TISH wards, and the work needs to be accelerated. Chair, under Program 3, we are slightly off, and I would say marginally off, the target to achieve the working opportunities in terms of the Community Works program, where our target was 21,000 and we have achieved just over 20,000. So the target is marginally off. Chair, that's an area that has been raised by the AG as well, because our portfolio of evidence was not up to scratch, and we are working with National so that we can improve on that particular area. And Chair, as we indicated, we do follow a risk-based approach when it comes to the management of areas of risk in municipalities where there's a greater need. So areas in terms of your fire brigade services, we only supported West Rand so far. We need to go to the Sedibeng area. But then similarly, we also, in terms of infrastructure-related programs, we have supported the 5 municipalities where there is a great need for that particular support. But of course, when it comes to the monitoring of infrastructure projects, we do monitor all of them. Chair, some of the key performance highlights that we wanted to share with you is that as the municipalities are in the process of having their regularity audits done, we needed to pay particular attention to strengthen internal controls insofar as unauthorized, irregular, wasteful, and fruitless expenditure are concerned, and making sure that there is ongoing engagements with internal audit, your supply chain management, and we need to assess the progress with the implementation of their project plans. But key amongst your unauthorized, irregular, wasteful, and fruitless expenditure is your compliance with supply chain regulations, but then also look at the identified internal control weaknesses that hamper our ability to further reduce that particular expenditure. Chair, these are some of our key flagship projects with the municipal support, and we know that the UIF and W expenditure is still quite high in municipalities, but we can demonstrate some of the good work that we have done and some of the improvements that we have made once the committee is conducting some of the key engagements. We would be happy to go into detail and provide that information. Chair, in terms of capacity development, it was important that we work with the different municipalities, specifically the Auditor General, looking at the concerns raised by the AG and how we need to institutionalize the professionalization framework of the public service, and also ensuring good governance and institutionalize the municipal support regulations in the municipalities with the ultimate aim of ensuring accountability, organizational stability, but then also the service delivery outcomes that needs to be improved. Chair, both your Sedibeng, Mfuleni, and Merafong, they have received support from us when it comes to organizational performance management systems, but then also looking at compliance with audit of predetermined objectives. That is still an area that's quite weak in municipalities. monitoring of performance, but then also improved performance through the supporting evidence is an area that's quite weak, and we are paying additional attention to those. But also further as-is reports on the work that we have done has been completed, specifically the work in Sedibeng and Mfuleni, and at the time of reporting, the report from Merafong was still outstanding. Various working sessions have been held with municipalities to ensure that we look at proper performance indicators that's outcome driven, and that is where you will see the difference that could happen on the ground, Chair. That's an area that as CoGTA we pay particular attention to. Chair, on the next slide, when we look at the appointment of senior managers, important to note that the city of Tshwane, Sedibeng and Mfuleni, we have provided them with support. With the change in regulations, Chair, we have seen the posture of the minister. The minister feels that as the MEC of CoGTA, we need to ensure compliance. And we had special engagements with municipal managers to ensure that we create awareness on the municipal staff regulations, and they all understand what a selection panel should look like when they do interview for senior managers, but then also what's the process that should be followed and what's the process that follow the interview process. Once a competency assessment has been issued, how do you interpret it, but then also how do you make an offer of employment that is in compliance. But we often know, Chair, that with municipalities, there is different interpretations. The councillors that sit on the selection panel often have different views. And by the time the application or the appointment process is finalized, you then only find that there are non-compliance. We want to find a process, Chair, that we get through the value chain of the appointment with the municipality so that we guide them through the process, as opposed to at the end of the process, you now need to find yourself in a space where a candidate that have seen an advert applies for a position, that candidate is appointed, but only to find out in the end that there were non-compliance. But now, how do you compromise that particular candidate if you need to declare that appointment process irregular? So we want to see how we can work with municipalities throughout the value chain so that we improve the performance. And also, Chair, there is some serious improvement when it comes to senior management positions, where Mfuleni have appointed 9 out of 10 senior managers, but the position of Executive Director Public Works remain vacant. City of Tshwane have led the pack with the filling of all 8 senior management positions, and overall currently the vacancy rate stood at 14% with 95 out of the 111 approved positions filled. Chair, whilst they're also filling all the critical positions, they also need to build capacity in their organizations, not only at the top, but also ensuring that the support in the municipalities are there. What we see, Chair, is some of the gaps in terms of the competency assessments are areas of financial management, change management, knowledge and information management, also issues relating to innovation, but then also people management are some of the areas that's key that's coming out of there. Chair, on the next slide, when it comes to infrastructure planning, Chair, this is an area that I think as CoGTA, we also need to pay a bit more attention. Whilst the teams are on the ground working with municipalities, 2 areas that is of critical importance is, whilst we support municipalities to prepare business cases for infrastructure projects, planning in municipalities are seriously lacking. Because by the time you prepare a business case, you should have done your pre-planning already in advance. And by the time the funding comes on board, you should be in a position to implement and not start the process when the funding comes. So those are some of the serious gaps. As CoGTA, we have established a structure, Chair, where we bring together the Department of Infrastructure Development, the Department of Human Settlements, also municipalities, where what we have developed a track and trace template, and where we look at what are those hindrances and delays that's caused with the delivery of infrastructure projects, and all the municipal dependencies. With all the municipalities in there, you're able to resolve queries quite quicker. But what we also realize, Chair, the value proposition of how do you plan and how do you ask for approval for building plans is completely inconsistent across municipalities. Some municipalities have a complete manual system. Some municipalities, like the metros, are a bit in advance, but there is also delays. And municipalities do not realize the revenue that they can generate from approval of building plans and approval of various other statutory documentation that should be submitted by companies or individuals as a whole. Chair, the transformation program was a program that was primarily internally focused. It was a program that have hardly gone outside, but what we have done, we have repositioned that program so that they can work closely, convening areas such as youth imbizos in the different municipalities, but also skills development programs. Some of the key things is also working with SMMEs and people with disabilities in partnership with APSA, but their directive as the transformation unit in CoGTA, Chair, is due to the current fiscal constraints, they need to work closely with sector education and training authorities, trying to get funding so that we can bring interns in for development that is funded through CTAs and not funded from CoGTA. We want to expand that through all the municipalities, and the successful building inspectors program that we had with the Gauteng City Region Academy, where we have placed various inspectors in different municipalities. We want to mirror that program in other technical disciplines. Chair, then also on the next slide, you have some of the work that we have done with various ward committees, but then also work that we have done in other areas on gender-based violence. So really the work that they are doing is to go out what we are mirroring in the province. They need to ensure that those are mirrored in the municipalities. But their main function, Chair, from our view, should be to ensure that they bring in further partnerships. We establish new partnerships with CTAs that we have not worked with, and we ring-fence the appointment of interns in the department and also in the municipalities. Chair, on the next slide, we're just sharing with the Chair, we are now in Q2. The regularity audit finding from the AG, we received 12 findings. 50% of those findings were resolved by the end of the quarter. There are 50% of those findings outstanding, and those are 6 findings. The first one was the review of the indicators in the APP. The second one was the leave that needs to be approved before it is taken. But the system that we are using, which is ESS, often has some serious challenges, and that results in staff members submitting manual leave forms, and you often find a disjuncture between the leave taken and the leave that's captured. But there are various reconciliations being done to ensure that there's no funds lost by government through inadequate controls. But it's an area that we also pay close attention, because the leave of staff members needs to be captured. On the next slide, Chair, there was just some inconsistencies with the strategic plan and inconsistencies with the annual performance plan, but it's areas that's not regarded as material. It's areas that requires our attention, and those areas has been reviewed. Chair, the organizational structure is an area that will remain with us, as you will see in the next few slides as we report. But if everything goes according to plan, Chair, we hope to finalize the further review of the structure in line with the available budget by the end of the current financial year. And of course, Chair, the AG is at pains to say we need to review the wording of our indicators to be more outcomes-based and impact-driven. And as CoGTA, we are also reviewing that. But we also note with the AG that there are various dependencies that we as a department needs to look at, because you don't want that particular area to hamper your delivery. Chair, on the next slide, we're just going into a little bit of detail about the areas on the non-financial program performance report. We already indicated that we have achieved 83% of our targets. The next 4 slides, Chair, is what I have talked about on the areas that we have not achieved. And I want to pay particular attention, Chair, whilst I have given some explanations on the area of the asset-based engagements that we're supposed to have, and also the work that we are doing on infrastructure, I think it was important, Chair, based on previous comments from members, that we take you to slide 20. Chair, that particular slide gives you the process flow of the organizational structure. And Chair, as we sit currently, the positions on the left that was advertised, those are the positions that we have advertised so far. We have reprioritized a number of positions, and we're looking at contract positions and permanent positions, but we also look at some of the CDW positions that's vacant. Also bearing in mind, Chair, that we want to review the model for CDWs to make them more responsive, but then also in line with the new service delivery model. We want to review that. Chair, whilst we try to finalize the appointments by January 2026, it is a tall order by then, but we hope also that we can finalize most of those by the end of the current financial year. Chair, you will see when the CFO tables the financial report, as at the end of Q2, you're supposed to sit at 50%. On compensation of employees, we're already sitting at 51%. If we do not get the additional funding from Treasury, Chair, to fill the positions that I've put on the first slide, it means you're going to have the same amount of people that we have a gap in terms of senior management, the gap in people with disabilities. Because whilst we're targeting those particular disciplines, you need the funding to complement that. Chair, this is just the current capacity that we have in the department, and looking at the current 51% that we have spent, you can see there's 121 vacant positions. Those vacant positions will have to be reviewed completely when the organizational structure is finalized. In the past, you were allowed to build a structure, your ideal structure, but fund the structure in line with your available funding. But currently, if you put a structure forward to the provincial treasury, that structure must be fully funded. And it's for that reason why you had so many iterations of the organizational structure. And the areas below just give you some of the demographics. And more on the narrative side on the next slide, Chair, and this is primarily why we have remained a bit stagnant on this area. Our budget for compensation was top sliced from 430 million to 385 million. So you can see the big jump. Almost 45 million was taken from compensation. We know there were some legacy issues in CoGTA, CDWs that were not paid for a number of years. All those has been corrected in the last financial year, Chair. The payment of performance incentives for other categories of staff has been finalized, and there are no legacy issues when it comes to that. But to build the organizational structure, at least with a minimum capacity, you need to further increase that budget. Sitting with 51% means there is a possible risk of over expenditure in terms of the budget. And it's something that we want to try and guard against. And it's for that reason, Chair, we received approval from the provincial treasury to proceed with a number of positions. And I have just taken a cautious approach as the accounting officer, because if I incur over expenditure, the argument will always be, whilst the provincial treasury and the office of the Premier will provide you with approval, you need to ensure that you work within the fiscal constraints of the department. And that is primarily where we are. Chair, from a non-financial perspective, that takes care of the performance. I want to ask the CFO to take us through the financial part of the performance. We can then hand back to the Chair after that. Acting CFO.
I don't see the CFO. Or you got another one?
I'm here. Morning, Chair, and the members of the committee, morning HOD, CoGTA team, committee team, and the support staff for the committee, and other colleagues on the platform. Chair, I will take the committee on the issues that are related to the financial performance of the department until the end of 30 September 2025, which is the second quarter of the current financial year. Chair. Chair, as a department, we've got four programs that we have to perform in terms of the budget performance and the budget structure of the department that is universal to all provinces. On administration, Chair, we have achieved 56%. We still are left with 67.6 million that we have to spend until the end of the financial year. Then we come to local governance, which is regarded as a core function of the department that deals with mostly the municipalities' support. We're at 44%. We're left with 144 million to spend until 31st March 2026. Development planning, which is the third program, was sitting at 45% in terms of the expenditure by the end of September 2025. We are still left with 65.9 million to spend. The last program is program number 4, the traditional institutional management, that deals with mostly our two local authorities in the province. We are at 43% with 11.6 million to spend. Accumulatively, as a department, we have spent 48%, which was just short of 1 or 2% to meet the threshold of 50% for the second quarter. We still have 289.3 million to spend. The next slide. On economic classification, the current payments were sitting at 48%. The compensation of employees was sitting at 51%. We're left with 187.6 million to spend. If you look at the actual expenditure for up to the end of September, is sitting at 197.5%, or which we are left with 187.6 million to spend, which indicates, as per what HOD initially said, that we might overspend on compensation of employees. So we need to be assisted by Treasury in terms of the top slicing that they've done during the beginning of the financial year. Otherwise, any over expenditure on compensation of employees is regarded as irregular expenditure. Chair, on goods and services, we're sitting at 38%. We still have 93.3 million to spend. It's due to the unfolding of tender processes that are still going to, procurement processes that are still unfolding as we are speaking now. That is why at the current end of the second quarter, we're still behind in terms of expenditure on this economic classification. We're moving to transfers to municipalities, where we have only one category of transfers that assisting municipalities with fire brigade services in terms of the equipment that they are supposed to procure. We're at 75%. That's only 2 million that still have to be done before the end of the financial year. The household was sitting at 39%. Machinery, we're not moving much. We're sitting at 2%. Then we've got payments of financial assets, write-offs that were done in terms of the issues that related to debts that were not economically to recover, which we ultimately return off. Then ultimately, with accumulative expenditure, we're sitting at 48% as a department. Yeah, Chair, it's just a narrative on the second slide. The other slide, Chair. It's a narrative in terms of the expenditure where we have, as a department, we have been allocated 551.3 million. The expenditure was 262.0, which is sitting at 48%. On goods and services, we have spent 57 million against the budget of 150 million. Compensation of employees, as initially indicated, Chair, is 197 million against the budget of 385 million. The administration is 85 million, local governance 113 million, development planning 54 million, transitional management 8 million. On economic classification, as I've indicated earlier on, Chair, were lacking in terms of making sure that we don't incur irregular expenditure. Transfers to municipalities, we have transferred up to 6 million out of the 8 million that we have set aside. The Chair, we have also incurred an interest in terms of the overdue accounts that we have paid that were related to the court order that has been issued by the court for an outstanding amounts that we are supposed to pay, but the issues that related with these is because of the information that has not been done correctly. So we have to finalize this in terms of the court order, the 440,000 that we have paid. In terms of the payment of invoices to service providers that have rendered services to the department, which were not disputed, we have done 100% during the quarter under review. In terms of the revenue, Chair, of the transfers to municipalities, as I've indicated that we have, the main budget was 8 million, we have transferred 6 million to 3 municipalities, that is Mfuleni, West Rand, and Mid Valley. We are still left to do the transfer to the local municipalities. These are the amounts that are supposed to be spent by the municipality. Whilst we have transferred everything, is about 8 million, of which these amounts should be spent before their end of their municipal financial year, which is 30th June 2026. Yeah. The revenue collection, Chair, as a department, due to the service that we render, we are not a revenue generating department. We have 445,000 that we have set aside to collect over the year, but up to now we've collected 212 million, and we're left 233 million to collect, and we're at 48%. As a department, we do not have any other revenue services or revenue sources that we might have, other than in terms of the acquisition of a new building that we have currently. We have allocated parking bays to the officials of the department, and those parking bays should be paid by members of the department who have been allocated. So that's a little bit revenue that we're going to increase to the department, but it's not going to have much impact in terms of making sure that we've got enough money. Payment of service providers, as I've indicated, Chair, that we have achieved 100% in terms of the payments of service providers to the invoices to the service providers that have rendered services to the department. Chair, I just want to indicate that the commitments and accruals that we have, our projects currently, as by the end of September, they were sitting at 5.8 million that we still have to finance in terms of the first services that are still have to be rendered in terms of making sure that those projects are carried out to its maximum completion. And RFQs and RFPs were sitting at 32 million. By that time, on accruals, we've been sitting at 1.6 million, of which have been settled because we are settling all our invoices within 15 days, as per that directive from the province. I will pause there, Chair, for further engagements. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much. Chair, that concludes the overall presentation from the department. Chair, safe to say that if you look under the financial report, Program 1 have spent 56%. So it means Program 1 is under pressure. And the primary reason for that, Chair, is now that CoGTA has been allocated a building by the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure Development, some of the associated costs outside your leasing needs to be carried by CoGTA. And we have gone on tender for proper cleaning services so that the building can be properly maintained. And the 2% underspending that you'll see overall on the 48% is some of the expenditure or some of the savings that we will use to offset some of the pressure areas. But some of the expenditure, Chair, in Program 3 specifically, have not been realized yet because we are waiting for the invoices from City Power. That work on the energy program has now been finalized. The final work on testing and commissioning is basically done. So there are commitments that we need to carry, and we do have funds for that. But in the event that we still have some savings, Chair, that will be used to support the administrative program, which is currently sitting at 56%. And Chair, I hope the members have taken note of the expenditure under compensation, which is already sitting at 51%. It could, if the funding is not coming from the provincial treasury, it could hamper our ability to further build the capacity in the organizational structure. Chair, thank you very much to yourself and the members. I will hand back to you.
Thank you very much. Can we then have the honorable members engaging on the presentation? Honorable members, take into account that I know that we went through specifics in terms of the questions we want to ask, but those questions would be sent to the department and they will duly respond and will deal with it in that sense. The reason why I'm raising it is that I don't want it to constrain you. Here, as you engage here, you are allowed to engage broadly as you want in terms of the presentation itself. Any taker? Member Mohoe? Member Mosai? Member Rasulongwan? I was going to call you. And Member Dilebo will speak as when he comes in. All right, can we follow that? And I'll come in the last.
No, thank you, Chair. I think like you were saying that we also dealt with some of the issues that we think formally will then be able to send to the department. And I think that maybe because the department is here, it's to at least speak to the department, HOD, that in the quarterly reports, whether it speaks to issues of appointing of senior management positions of staff, capacitating the department, whether it speaks to at least money spent towards vulnerable groups. In all the reports that we've been dealing with, there's less talk about the youth. And then, which for me presents a particular problem, that we might be isolating how we interact with the youth of the province. And I think that Chair, as part of the way forward, might be that I know that the Premier has appointed a youth advisory panel, which of course they later adopted an integrated youth development strategy. And if we check, we don't have a common approach, even in municipalities, on how to build a youth machinery and what issues that we need to respond. And I think, HOD, let's look at the integrated youth development strategy and how can the department at least propose some regulations to the CSSL committee to then be able to have a common approach on what must become the youth machinery and institutions that we must build to respond to youth issues across the province, so that there's similarity in approach in all municipalities on what must happen, on whether it's youth directorates or it's youth units that are appointed. And of course, it must be known that it is compulsory to have these particular structures, because it will be a bit problematic if we ignore this particular approach. When you engage with a number of municipalities, you can see that there is no there's no will to try and, of course, capacitate structures of the youth in this different municipalities. So I think it will be important to at least craft a common approach on what must happen, how much do we spend on the youth and all those things, so that we are, all of us, we know the Bible that we must then be able to read from when we deal with youth issues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much in that sense.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let's welcome the presentation. Chair, I don't think we received the department presentation. If it could be shared, I thought maybe there was a problem with my gadget after the session. So I want to welcome the presentation, HOD, but I think my interest is on program 2. And I know you'll understand why my interest would be on program 2, Chair, because I am from that environment. Now, I'm concerned by the fact that there has not been any implementation during quarter 1, quarter 2 of the ABCD initiatives. You've set aside about 50 initiatives that might take place, and you've got about 5 regions. Now, it tells me that you're saying each region must then implement 10 ABCD initiatives. Already in quarter 1 and quarter 2, it means you have not done that. And I suppose your baseline would have been from the previous financial year. Now, what I would want to understand then, if you have not met these targets on CDWP program implementation, especially on the ABCD, how are you then going to recover quarter 1 and quarter 2? And I also want to maybe go back to the presentation the HOD also gave us on the recruitment, on the vacancies. In fact, it says to us, Chair, the vacancy of a director is very important and critical. It does show why, if there's a vacancy, then it means there won't be any performance. I'm not only talking about the CDWP one, but I'm saying then you can correlate, the two, because there is nothing happening in terms of the ABCD. Now, Chair, for me, it then reflects that by quarter 3, we should have, this committee should receive a report that 40 initiatives should actually have been implemented. I'm not sure if the department will be able to cover that, but considering knowing how ABCD model is that you need to mobilize communities to come up with their own initiatives. I don't know why is it so difficult, for the department to even get 20 community initiatives or community members to participate in a program. You've got about over 300 CDWs. You have around over, I think, maybe 259 wards with CDWs, but you only have 50 initiatives. It doesn't make sense. I think the department really needs to review that, because how are you then going to have community asset mapping? Because obviously once you have identified the stakeholders, you've got the database of those that share the same interest, then you'll be able to go and do a walk around the communities and identify assets, and you are able to come up with community projects. And it really is really not happening. So I'm really imploring on the department really to just maybe review the model, review the budget that you would have put aside for the CDWP program, because mostly you don't need the budget because you can identify the venues, whether it's churches, whether it's school, but also because the programs would have to take place the whole day, then it means you only have to focus on catering. But the number, when you correlate that, the number of CDWs that you have, the wards that you have, the initiatives that you are putting aside, 50 is really not enough. In fact, I think maybe the committee would really need to be given information on how much is budgeted for the ABCD in public participation, how much is budgeted or allocated for capacity building, and how much is allocated for just CDWP implementation, and whether that budget is all spent, or maybe at some point the budget needs to be returned. I really foresee that if you have not implemented them by now, you know, with quarter 3, it means then money must be returned to Treasury, and I don't think it's a good idea. Just maybe on the municipalities' reports, it suggests that, you know, the municipalities are compliant with delivering services to communities, which we know is not the case. There's community protests that are taking place, there's petitions that are taking place. Maybe then the department must tell us what measures have they put in place to interrogate, you know, the municipal reports. It must just exclude, you know, the compliance that are doing, but just to interrogate and verify whether community does receive the services, because there can't be such an outcry, and yet the municipalities are compliant. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that sequence.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and I also just want to start off by welcoming the presentation from the department. Safe to say, HOD, I will not be talking about municipalities and the support that they're receiving in terms of how they hire their senior management. But maybe just to talk to the women in leadership, obviously the target that you have set, which is 50%, and obviously considering that you've only achieved 35%. And I think in my short time in this committee, I'm fairly new, but I know for sure that in each quarter, in fact, the department has not been able to meet this target. And I think the one question that I will then have is, obviously you've seen the patterns from previous quarter. What strategies or concrete strategies are you then as a department working on to ensure that there is improvement going forward? Because the presentation or the reports that we're getting, particularly for this quarter, it has always been the case ever since I've been here, which obviously talks to the issues that there is a serious concern. And I think at this point in time, we should at least be getting strategies to address, you know, the concerns that you've seen in previous quarters. So I would just like to know from the department, you've seen the pattern, you've seen how you have been unable to meet this target. What are you doing differently to ensure that it is actually addressed? And then secondly, Chair, the HOD reported regarding appointment in Mfuleni, of which they were able to meet 9 out of 10, but they mentioned that the public works remains vacant. If we can just get an indication, because oftentimes we are told these things, but there's no, you know, communication in terms of what criteria they're setting up for themselves to be able to address this. Is there timeframes to say, yes, we are reporting to the committee at this particular time and it hasn't been met. However, we commit that this should be addressed within 3 months or 2 weeks, or something that we can be able to hold them accountable for. And then lastly, Chairperson, so the department spoke about monitoring 3 municipalities in how they're implementing their anti-corruption measures within these municipalities. And City of Johannesburg, again, has always been the case in each and every report or the quarters that we get every time. And there seems to be a recurrence, and we're not getting an idea in terms of who has been held accountable. What is the consequences management? Because the reality on the ground really does go down to service delivery. And I think, as Member Musai has indicated, we see the lack of water, we see the communities protesting, and it's just ongoing. But I think it will just satisfy us as a committee to see that, yes, we've been talking about corruption, but there at least is consequences management that are taking place. We've got individuals or officials that have been held accountable. We've got individuals that are repaying what they have stolen from the city. I think that will give us some confidence in a sense that at least there is consequences management that is taking place and it is actually effective. So if maybe the department can just take us into confidence with that. Chairperson, thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Dilebo is not here. But if what we are told in the Madlanga Commission about what's happening in the Kuruleni fire, is it fire department or whatever? EMPD, then consequence management is a far-fetched idea. Yeah. Anyway, one of those things that we're faced up with. On the issues of monitoring, isn't it that it's the departmental key function that you have to monitor department across? And I'm raising it from some of the statement that one saw in your reports that says, for instance, we only monitored 2 or 3 municipalities insofar as infrastructure is concerned, and that's worrying because I thought that's what we should be doing on a daily basis and in different areas of the functioning of a municipality as such. Yeah, it's 5 instead of 9, that kind of a thing. So it can be selective from where I am. It should be our central function, but you can comment on that. This one, I'll throw it under the vacancies. You're saying UIF and W, it's one of the flagship projects of the department. Now, my worry is, can we quantify the impact of the interventions we're making? Because you will tell us that we are making interventions, but when we look at the reality in terms of the UIFW, it's increasing in municipality. Can you quantify that? Is there a comprehensive program to professionalize the service in the municipalities? Or are we still waiting for the act to be passed and so on and so on? I'm not sure how far is the process, but is there a comprehensive program that we've put in place so that when we talk about professionalization of this service, we know exactly what is it that we're talking about? Because for me, it's not about whether people have got the right qualifications or not. There's variety of issues that impact on the professionalization itself, amongst others being issues of leadership, issues of interface, issues of responsibilities that municipal officials are having and so on, and whether they are executing their work or they're not executing their work, all of those kind of things. Dealing with the culture, the political culture that has been established in municipalities and ensuring that people, there's clearly a demarcation on what is it that we have to do and what is it that they have to do, that kind of a situation. Same question on quantification. You're saying there's been intervention on Sedibeng, Mfuleni, and Merafong. But these municipalities we are making reference to are, from where I'm seated, the worst performing municipalities. and your reports keeps on telling us that there's intervention on this municipality, but they're the worst performing. Can you quantify that intervention you're making in those municipalities? What does it mean? I see you made a reference to the fact that the minister wants the MEC to ensure compliance insofar as the issues of the panel are concerned. Isn't it that a local government is highly regulated? And all that you have to do is to read, and it will tell you this is how you constitute a panel. Why is it that people are getting it wrong? And we're referring it as interpretation, because I don't think we should. There's things that are straightforward. If you have to have 5 people and it tells you you must have X, Y, and Z, and there's no interpretation issue. You just have to do it in accordance to what the law wants you to do, not in accordance to the outcome I want out of it. Because if I'm driven by the outcome I want, then I will set up my own criteria in my own panel. So really, we can't. There are things that we just can't waste time on them. We just have to correct them. When you got it wrong, you get it wrong. We're not going to approve this person. Go and get it right. As simple as that. Because I hear what you are saying, that we must walk with them, hold them by their hands, so that we don't come at the end. No, people must know what is their responsibilities and how to discharge their responsibilities. Of course, I agree on the framework. Maybe the observation that things are not clear, but from where I am, I think things are clear on what's to be done insofar as that is concerned, issues of the panel. Vacancy rate. Well, let me start with the infrastructure issues first. Our municipalities not having master plans on infrastructure, of which from time to time they would be going back to those master plans and extracting the kind of project that they have to be implemented on the basis of priorities that they've put in place and on the basis of the funding that is there. Unlike conceptualizing, researching every time when they have to make an intervention on the infrastructure. Two, a situation where when you get appointed a member Musai in the municipality, you don't have to think, oh, where do I start with the infrastructure? You just go to a master plan and say, oh, these are the issues. So we're starting here, we go in there. That kind of a situation, because we cannot be theorizing about these issues forever. So I just wanted to find out on the infrastructure master plan. The high rate of the vacancies, even from the department itself, you find it in municipalities, you find it in the department itself, and there's a statement that you made around, yeah, there it is. There's a statement that you made that the issue of funding becomes a constraint, and that if we don't get this money from Treasury, we will not be able to implement or fill this vacancies that are there. And the question would be, what will be the reason to make commitments that we will be able to implement the following, but knowing that, that there's no funding for such? Isn't it that will end up being in the same position? And that is linked to the compensation of employee that already indicates to you that you'll not be able to fulfill this function, because you're almost at 51%, and you want to fill these vacancies. That added to 51%, it might throw you out. So you know exactly where you are, but there is a commitment to try and implement that you know that you'll not be able to implement, unless I'm getting it wrong. But that's my reading there around the issues of vacancy rate. The point is, I don't want you to come back to us again and say we could not fulfill because there were no funding made available for this capacity that we so require. I agree on the issues of the youth, and my question is, if you look at the programs that you call them transformation programs, when you deal with the youth in Bezos and so on and so on, surely in those in Bezos you get issues that cut across departments, not issues that are only limited to yourself. Question is, what then? Put it differently, how do you process those issues? And I'm sure Member Mohove would have made reference to the youth development strategy, which is integrated in a way, trying to bring all of us together and so on. But you don't get that sense from the report that was presented before us. The last point, it would be, I know in one of these, what was it, parliamentary ad hoc committee, somebody was asked to define the word activist. There was a problem. And then I realized we just say these words, we don't seem to understand what they mean. But isn't it that activism is one of the issues that can help us when we engage with ward councillors? Because part of the objective of ward committees, because part of the objective of ward committees was to bring together the different sectors of society and ensure that there's a proper engagement with those sectors of society. Because if we're going to try and emphasize more on issues that we can budget for, moving away from activism that can be an initiative that comes from communities, people volunteering their services and helping us to fight that and so on and so on. For me, that can work better than a bureaucratic approach insofar as the working of the ward committee system is concerned. Because if we do that, we places more dependence to government and its funding rather than communities themselves participating as such. So I'll leave it there, Chair. And Member Dilebo, I know in your absence, I said if there's anything you want to say before you left, you are at liberty to say that before we give them to respond. Do you have anything?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions today. I think we did submit our questions yesterday. I believe they have been sent to the department. Thank you.
There was no harm in repeating them. Member Musai asked me to make a quick add a quick question before the department comes in. Member Musai?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted maybe the department, if you can just provide us with the reasons why the CDBing positions are not filled. Because I recall when I was still there, left 2022, it was still at 50% and was still at 50%. I think maybe the committee really needs to be taken into confidence what is causing the delay in terms of filling those 3 positions, because it's 50% of their senior positions. Thanks.
HOD?
Chair, thank you very much. Chair, I'm glad some of the members have not repeated some of the Tshwane questions, but I'm happy to respond. Chair, let me first invite my team to respond on the municipal support issues, the infrastructure issues, and then I will also come in on the conclusion of those. But Anthony, let's start with you, and then we can go around that side. I will then conclude on a number of other questions, Chair. If the interpretation was so easy, Chair, my job would have been much easier. I would have loved my job, but just because of all the legal issues, I don't think it's a pleasant job, but I'll respond to that, Chair. Thanks. Anthony?
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, HOD and colleagues. I think just as a response to, on behalf of the program on local government support, the very intensive questions around the ABCD program is being addressed in the department vis-a-vis the capacity challenges to deliver. But I think that when we respond in writing, we will then put a mitigation plan on how we go into fast track to cover the deliverables promised. And I think that that we can do from the program, and we will engage the key units on that. But I think it's important to note that any underperformance there, we will be caught wanting if we don't fast track to deliver on that. Then in terms of the questions around the URFW, yes, Chair, we and members, we can quantify the work being done on URFW. However, our first intervention is around putting in place the internal control systems in municipalities to prevent further occurrences. What is left is, once those internal control measures, standard operating procedures are in place, is for the municipality to implement. Some of the issues where you don't see URFW reducing at the fast rate as expected is because there are legacy issues and multi-term or multi-year issues that are carried forward. But my colleague Nelly Siwe will also expand. We have seen some reductions. We are expecting further reductions, even if it's post the audit, because of the actions taken by National Treasury. There's been a strong directive that reductions of URFW must see the light of day. So there is a big focus, even from the local government turnaround strategy, the work stream on governance, that is a particular focus. Is there a comprehensive program to professionalize? No, Chair, we don't have a comprehensive program at this point. And however, I must say that we did some comparison with the framework. So we're not going to wait for the act or anything. The comparison with the framework and the municipal staff regulations, there's a correlation and a significant progress is being made in that area, particularly, as you can see, even on the vacancy rates that we are need to respond on. There's much more stability. If you compare this term of office to the last term of office, you would see a significant progress in the reduction in vacancy, 14% versus in the last term almost an average of 68% throughout the term. So that is a significant progress in terms of the intervention that the municipal staff regulations are making. But however, given that it's an embryonic stage to professionalize, we will then also look into, because the AG is tracking this as well, how are we implementing the framework? So we are going to be looking at that to mitigate. It's part of our technical indicators that came into our plan. So that's on that day. Chair, I made some remarks on the vacancy rate. We were, in Mfuleni, the advert for the Public Works program closed last week. So they are going to start processing the shortlisting. On Sedibeng, we are outstanding some accurate information. I would not want to guesswork there, but we can then follow up and provide proper information on that. But on Mfuleni, I can say that the MM's response and HR's response is that they will be shortlisting that program. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, HOD. Nelly Siwe might want to respond to URFW and extend.
Yeah, just do it in whatever manner that you, as a department, want. Proceed.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, everyone. So on the URFNW, just what I want to add is the fact that you have the whole process of maybe, let's say it's an irregular contract, you investigate it. And as you may know, MPEC will come with a recommendation to say recovery or write-off, or the DC board. The final decision is with council. So we are finding that more and more things will be done to a point of investigation, the outcomes are there, and then to get that final step of council implementing the outcomes of the investigation, either holding someone accountable to recover the money or to write off, that takes a bit of time. And we're not yet 100% sure if it's uncertainty from the side of council to take these decisions or what it is. But then we feel like hamstrung when it comes to that process. However, in terms of controls, in terms of capacitating MPEC, sitting with them during the hearings, we do try to do all of that and give them questions to ask that are relevant for the officials. But then the part where it needs to just be finalized sometimes does not happen on time, and so you're finding that it does not reduce. And as Anthony said, it's also the issue of once it's incurred, it's out of the hands of the department to do much about it. It has to take all those other processes, and they can just ignore, municipalities can ignore certain laws and continue with an irregular contract, and then it's 5-year contract, and that irregular expenditure will be incurred for the 5 years until that contract comes to an end. Thank you, Chair.
Morning, Chair, and morning, honorable members. Two issues raised, Chair, with regards to the monitoring of the municipalities on infrastructure programs. The monitoring actually happens throughout. It's the support that actually gets to be sort of targeted based on the municipality having requested for support, and there would be areas that they would want to be supported on. For instance, Fulani would ask that we support them on developing a cost of supply study for electricity, for them to be sure that when they have the tariffs for electricity, they are cost reflective. And depending on whether we've got the financial muscle, the department will then do that. Otherwise, we'll try and facilitate for funding from other sources. And in the absence of that funding, we probably would not be able to then support them in that instance. Then, Chair, there's the matter around whether there's master plans, infrastructure master plans for municipalities. And in that regard, one would want to indicate that for the different categories of infrastructure, whether it's roads, water, energy and electricity, probably what solid waste disposal infrastructure, municipalities are then legislatively required to have those in place. If I can make an example with the integrated energy plans, we've undertaken an assessment, and we could pick up all of the municipalities have the plans in place. But then there are those that actually are outdated and they need to be reviewed. And municipalities would sit and not review those. Of course, we are initiating a process to support them financially for that. And as you can imagine, there isn't sufficient funding for us to go out and support them on that. And what's interesting is even some of the metros are actually not able to review their own integrated energy plans. So, and then there's a view in terms of what happens with the roads, what happens with the water services development plans, in terms of where they are. That assessment gets to be undertaken regularly. And municipalities don't seem to prioritize the review of these plans as much as in the MIG grant. There is a portion that is now actually allowed for them to utilize to do that. So for 5% of what they get allocated, they can actually take and use it for the development and review of these plans. So that's the first thing. So the plans are there. It's either they are up to date or outdated. Then the second part to that, Chair, is why does it seem like it's a struggle that municipalities don't seem to know whether they're coming or going in terms of what they've planned to do and what they need to do. And of course, that is the situation, in that there would be a plan that is put on the table for certain infrastructure to be rolled out. And first of all, there would be the financial constraints, given the amount of money that they are allocated from their grants, which is not adequate to undertake the work. for starters is that. So you'd find that some of the projects that have been planned can be delivered, depending on the size of the project, can be delivered in 2 years or a year. And if the project is quite big, it then takes them even close to 3 years to complete, 4 years to complete the project. And now there's also the challenge in that that is experienced by municipalities, in that there would be funding as they would actually be required. And I think this is what we're picking up as part of the monitoring and even supporting municipalities through the LGTAS work that we're doing now. In the work stream on municipal infrastructure and service delivery, we have a couple of KPIs that we're looking at, and one of them is actually with regards to how much do they allocate of their infrastructure budget towards operation and maintenance. And if I can tell you, Chair and honorable members, only 2 municipalities were able to meet the threshold set by Treasury of allocating about 8% of the total infrastructure funding towards operation and maintenance, and spend that money for operation and maintenance. The rest of the municipalities, I mean, the metros couldn't meet that threshold. I think it's only Midval and Mfuleni in the year 2022-2023. In the year 20, yes. The reason for that, Chair, being that through Section 63, there was then a shift in terms of how they allocated the budget, because they were forced to do that through the Section 63, the invoking of Section 63. So then we came to 2023-2024, and the reverse happened. They could only spend about 2%. So it was only at the time when they were actually pushed to do that, and when the situation was reserved or reversed, or Section 63 actually moved out, the situation went back to what I'm indicating now. And this is as a result of the many competing priorities. So they would have a budget allocated, and something comes up. The first budget that will then be utilized to deal with putting out the fires is the money that comes from operation and maintenance. So that's the difficulty with the rollout of infrastructure and the maintaining of infrastructure for sustainable service delivery. So it requires that both at administrative and political level there is a firm decision that we're not going to be moving funds around if we are to succeed in this. The only biggest challenge being, and I don't know whether we will ever overcome that, is the constrained financial situation, which is not created by the municipalities themselves, but because the grants that they are getting are just not adequate to actually do some of these projects, because some of these projects would want to be implemented at a go. So the money must be made available immediately. So, for instance, if there is a project that costs 200 million for Randwest, their funding allocation is sitting in that space. The council is not going to take a decision to just go and do that reservoir for that year for 200 million and forget about everything else. So, and you can't build that reservoir over the years with that staggering that money. So the difficulty becomes what the funding mechanisms that can be made available. And of course, there has been the DVSA with the Vumela model that they put on the ground, but there seems to be no appetite from municipalities to actually get into those spaces, given the implication that they would then have to sort of pay that money back to the bank. So yeah, Chair and members, that's the situation around that. Some of it is because of the lack of stand decisions by councils, but some of it is actually beyond councils, in that there just doesn't seem to be enough resources going around to get to deliver on what needs to be delivered. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Chair, thank you very much. Are there anybody else that wanted to talk about it? Are you fine? Okay. Chair, let me go back to some of the questions raised by the members. I think, Chair, the response and the comments from members on the youth development strategy, we've taken note of that. We will go and report back on that. But, Chair, as our first iteration of the transformation report, we will also go back and going forward, we want to also report on military veterans. Chair, as you know, in the last quarter, the department did report 0, but it's all about how we deal with the issues of goods and services. But we have taken note of that. Chair, as Member Mosai indicated, Chair, we want to increase the number in relation to our asset-based community development approach. And with some of the work that have not taken place in Q2, we need to pick up speed in Q3 and 4. It's not an area that we cannot achieve. And when it comes to funding, Chair, there is no way that with the current funding constraints that we have, that we can still return money to the provincial fiscus as a result of poor planning. That cannot be allowed. And if you look at where our spending is, we should be in a position to fully spend our budget. Chair, and we are happy to share with the members in writing what are the budgets for the different areas under the Community Development and Public Participation Program, and that can be shared with members. Chair, the assessment of the members is absolutely correct. If you do the report on the status of municipalities, most of the service delivery areas remains green. But if you go on the reality on the ground, waste management in Mfuleni, it's not even at 50%, but they regard it as green. So there's interventions in that regard, and the same would apply to Merafong. So once we interpret the data, we know from our inspections and our monitoring that some of those is not a true reflection. Hence, we interrogate and we engage the municipality. Chair, the issue of consequence management is a serious problem. I think you will note in the report that we tabled on our annual report, the figures that we tabled and the ultimate audited figures by the AG, there was a difference in those figures. And we have undertook to also come back with those. Because municipalities, once it gets to council, the appetite to implement becomes a serious challenge. And that's where we often get stuck. But we engage with council through the MEC's IGR structures, where we hold them accountable through the various interventions on the local government turnaround strategy. Chair, despite the vacancies in CoGTA, where we have vacancies at director level, we often give people an opportunity to become acting directors with obviously a payment of an acting allowance so that we do not have any gap in the delivery of that particular function. But we also know over time it plays an onerous responsibility on a person to fulfill a dual function. Chair, the issue of the structure, Chair, yes, and members is correct. We have reported for some time certain information that remains stagnant, but the provincial treasury's view is clear. They have given us provision to proceed. So you see the 51%, Chair, you see we are right on the edge, but they have given us a provision to proceed, so, and they will give us the funding. I think what the provincial treasury is guarding against is giving you 45 million that they have taken from us. We only spent 20 million of that money because of various issues in recruitment, and you then sit with material underspending. We just hope that the provincial treasury, they can then give us that amounts in a staggered fashion so that we can further build the structure. Chair, the issue of appointments, I think we do get accurate data from municipalities when they re-advertise and the process of recruitment. I think what is not always coming out clear, why do they re-advertise? Is it because the applicants, it's non-responsive? Or is it just the selection panel that realize, oh, our candidates have not applied, let's just re-advertise? It could be some of those. If you realize the challenges in a selection panel when they need to compose that panel, you will understand that there's internal dynamics at play. And we often try and guard against. That's one of the reasons, Chair, that the professionalization framework of government, and particularly local government, they need to be insulated from that particular interference. If you listen to that particular work stream on the white paper on local government, there is actually an outcry that you do not have any councillors on a panel to appoint a senior manager and a municipal manager in a municipality, only experts. Currently, the provision is your councillor, there is an expert, is the person that you report to directly, and so on. So those are the provisions. But it's completely interpreted differently because they say 3 to 5. So now the 3 to 5 means, oh, you can actually have more than one councillor. Court cases over the last 3 to 6 months have clearly indicated that that interpretation was completely wrong. But what the challenge is, Chair, is the municipality are compelled to follow the process. If the authority is vested in council, council must approve the appointment. The mayor and the municipal manager should then write to the MEC within 14 days so that we can do a compliance assessment on the appointment. If they take longer, that person accepts duty and that person is starting in the municipality. By the time we receive the documentation, that person is appointed. If there are non-compliance, we need to enforce compliance by writing back to the municipality and ask them to rescind the appointment. Does one sphere of government wants to fight with another sphere of government? The attitude of national is, yes, you will enforce compliance. But the dynamics in each province is different. So that's some of the challenges that we are sitting with. I don't want to provoke Member Rasilingwani on Tshwane and Ekurhuleni, but we've seen what has happened there, Chair. We have seen what has happened. And those are some of the problems that we're sitting with. Our MEC is quite clear. Let's have a proper IGR engagement. As the HOD, I had many engagements with Tshwane, City of Joburg, Ekurhuleni. We even put out a clear legislative framework. The attitude is just, we just don't agree with you. What's the reasons? They don't give reasons. We don't agree with you. We're prepared to go to court. That is the answer. So you need to have buy-in from all the stakeholders to deal with that, Chair. Otherwise, it just makes your job very difficult. Chair, the issue of ward committees. If I give my professional opinion, and I'm standing as a researcher in the university, I will say it's overrated. Because if I look at the amount of work that we are doing in the municipalities, I feel the ward committees are not doing what they're supposed to. Because, Chair, the energy project is a typical example. Before we even prepare the business case, Chair, we engage with the communities throughout. You expect the ward committees to engage. But by the time there is implementation, the first thing that the communities ask us, but where's our 10%? We are not aware of this. We have not been consulted. We are now at the tail end of implementation, and that is the reason why that project has been delayed. On Tuesday in Merafong, Chair, parts of the community didn't want me to leave because they felt they have not been consulted on some of the reductions in water that has happened. So there is just no communication with the community. So I often question the work that needs to be done. That model, in my view, Chair, needs to be reviewed so that people can be held accountable. Chair, on the issue of the positions in Sedibeng, why it still remains 50%, the clear answer is there appears to be disagreement by the time the positions are being advertised, at the time that the shortlists are being done, so that it can be tabled at the selection committee and council for approval. There is, of course, other reasons, but that to me is the clear reasons for that particular ones. And I think on the issue of Mfuleni, the team has responded. And Chair, if the current system that we use for reporting for community development workers, we want to see how that system can be integrated properly with the service delivery dashboard of the Office of the Premier, without creating dual reporting and without creating an onerous reporting role on CDWs, so that we can be more responsive to communities. When they report issues, we can be responsive and deal with those responses. But Chair, all the other matters where it's required a written response, such can be provided. But Chair, I think we have responded to most of the questions, but some of the others were comments which we will take into consideration going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Raslingwan is going to consolidate numbers for tomorrow, so we'll allow you to do so. Yeah, we'll allow, but you must be careful that numbers won't be numbering. Yeah. Thank you very much from the department. I think the one issue for me is on professionalization. This thing that we should, maybe councillors must leave this thing to expect and so on. It quickly reminded me something. I think it's too liberal an approach, because it almost suggests that leave the economy to the markets. When they mess you up, you'll have to take accountability. We've got to strike a balance there, so that we don't create a situation where you have officials who do not even acknowledge the fact that you've got councillors because they had no role to play in bringing them in the institution or whatever the issue is. The last point, and I'm going to ask this question until I've got the right answer, HOD, on water. Do we have such shortage of water, or do we have infrastructure challenges?
Infrastructure challenges, Chair.
Too low, you.
Chair, infrastructure challenges is the biggest, because your non-revenue water is over 50% in certain municipalities. And Chair, if we do water preservation, water conservation, you can even have a better water supply. But your biggest problem is infrastructure, and the amount of, I don't want to call it immigration, let me call it delivery, and the increase in members in a particular community places strain on infrastructure. And the amount of people moving in, the size of the communities, and the level of infrastructure delivery, there's no correlation between the two. And automatically you will have strain on your infrastructure. Of course, as we predict the increase in members moving to Gauteng, the work on the Lesotho Highlands Water Project is well underway. Although it is delayed up until 2028, you want to plan for that. But if you don't have sufficient storage capacity in terms of reservoirs, we deal with water leaks, you're going to lose water as well. And sometimes we just see it as losing water, but that municipality is losing that percentage of revenue that they cannot collect, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I suppose that the bigger project, Member Musai, would be, I was in Venda on my in-laws, and I realized, how beautiful is this place? Why can't they stay there? They've got beautiful houses and so on. And then as I go on, then I realize, oh, there's a problem of the industries and infrastructure that we need to build. The same challenge you'll find it when you go to Eastern Cape and so on. And I suppose it's the character of the homelands and the challenges that they are faced, and therefore pushing people to follow the economy, because nobody will stay in a place of poverty. You will always follow the... So I guess in terms of the bigger project, that's what we need to do to ensure that the resources of the country equitably used, and that no other province feel more pressure than the other. Because somebody told me why there's a focus in Johannesburg in terms of the local government election that is coming, Member Musai. They were telling me that Cape Town has reached stagnation in terms of economic development. And Johannesburg has more potential. And therefore, and that is why even the headquarters of many of these companies have committed to ensure that the CBD of Johannesburg is being cleaned. I mean, the other time I even saw the CEOs of the companies where they're helping to pick up garbage and so on and so on. And so it's because Johannesburg has got that potential. I get it, when the whole thing was happening, they simply moved to Western Cape. Now it's difficult, they need to go back to Johannesburg and so on. So I leave it to you as researchers. Go deeper and check what is there. Perhaps that's the status of affairs. If that's the status, it means that as a province, it will put us in a better position to can address some of these infrastructural challenges that municipalities are faced up with. I was impressed to a point of disbelief on the report I've seen. And I wanted to give you a call, but I decided let me just relax and see. On the report that I've seen of Tshwane, that they collected how many? 4 billion in a month. Maybe I got it wrong. I was so impressed to the point of disbelief. But that's the issue we're going to talk about it. That if that is the truth, then there's potential for our municipalities to really sustain themselves if we can focus on those areas that they're focusing on. I think as a committee, Member Musai, we've got to focus on what is it that was done differently that would have ensured that there's that high level of revenue collection, rather than the politics. There are politics, which party has done, that should not be our interest. Our interest should be what is it that has been done to ensure that we achieve that, and whether that cannot be replicated to other municipalities as one of the best practices that we can learn from. Same issue that I always talk about, HOD, of the audit outcome. I mean, if for many, many years the department is getting clean audit, why are we not replicating that to municipalities? I know you're not the same, but I'm sure there's something that, one or two things that the municipalities can learn, which can put them in a better position. As I indicated, we will send in our questions, and those questions should be responded by Wednesday, the 19th of November. Am I right? Yeah. And then we can take our discussion further. I hope that we all know that on the 20th we're going to West Rand. We have made a commitment to visit all municipalities. So we thought, initially we wanted to go to Sidibeng and Midval, but we thought let's complete the West Rand because we're only left with 2 municipalities, which is the district itself and Rand West. So the 20th we go in there, and from there we said we're going to Sidibeng, and then in Sidibeng we'll bring together Midval, Lesedi, and the district. Then we're done because we've been going to Mfuleni, isn't it? We've been in Mfuleni. And from there we can then work together to prioritize the metros. Metros, we'll have to deal with them one by one, which first metro, the second metro, third metro. In terms of our intentions that by June, we need to be in a position to put together our own report, HOD. We want to put our own report in terms of our own experiences insofar as municipalities are concerned, which report, of course, will share it with yourself because it is yourself who can make the findings and the recommendation of that report a success. However, the findings and the recommendations of that report would give us more focused chance to play our oversight responsibility, even with those particular municipalities working together with yourselves as such. That's the intention from the committee. I hope that you will be able to reach that. I know that you always tell me something about money. That's my friend. So some of these meetings, if I cannot host them, you would simply host them like a HOD. It's not a state capture, it's cooperative government. It's cooperative governance. So if I can't, it means I cannot say we can't do this work because we don't have money. We will do this work in the context of cooperative governance. So till now, you can't buy us. You can take us to beautiful places, but we will remain focused on the oversight work that we need to do. So I suppose that we need to go to the next item. Jabu, let me check quickly. Okay, what is it? The 20th. So our date of the next meeting, HOD and everybody, honorable members, will be the 20th of November. We'll be meeting in either the district offices or Rand West offices in the West Rand to deal with those matters that we usually do, the oversight visit. And thank you very much for your support, HOD and your team. Since I've started here, I must say that I've enjoyed the support you're giving to the committee in terms of attending. I know the MEC from time to time has got issues, but I'm not that much worried. What worries me a lot is whether we're doing work or not, and that's why I have a better sense that we are focused, we are doing the kind of work that we need to be doing. Thank you very much, members. In your individual capacity and as a collective, you really take time to ensure that you are in these particular meetings. I know that at some point we overstretch you because you belong in many committees and there's a few of us, but you're trying your best and giving priority to the work of the legislature. Support staff, we thank you for the good work that you are doing. Let's meet on the 20th. The meeting stand adjourned. Yeah, we have it. We shall opposite.
Which is served on me, the restaurant down there. Thanks.
No fruitless, please.